Do they have a rally or something?
They would have 90 blocks off of those. Blocks.
You ready?
I'm ready.
But I didn't see your question.
You guys ready?
Yeah, we are ready. Vice Chair has it. She's getting hard to stop.
Yeah.
Make them ready.
Okay. Want to welcome everybody to this meeting of the date of April the 28th, meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit Board of Directors. I'd like the clerk to please do a roll call and then read the Metro Cable replay statement.
Okay, Director Brewer is absent. Director Budge?
Here.
Director Dickinson?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Kennedy is absent. Director Maple?
Here.
Director Rorba is absent. Director Schaefer?
Here.
Director Cerna is absent. Director Singh Allen? And Chair Jennings.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum of 5 votes, and this meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District is recorded. Oh, with 7 votes? 7, I'm sorry, I thought I said so. Okay, 7 votes. And this meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District is recorded with closed captioning. The recording will be cablecast on Metro Cable Channel 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast and DirecTV UVerse cable systems. The recording will also be video streamed at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting replays Thursday, May 1st at 2 p.m. and Saturday, May 3rd at 2 p.m. on Metro Cable Channel 14. Once posted, the recording of this meeting can be viewed on demand at youtube.com/MetroCable14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to myself or Adam. Once the item has been called, no additional speaker cards will be accepted. The time allowed for public comment is at the chair's discretion. The timer will chime when you have 20 seconds and then again when your time is up. There were 2 written public comments received for item 3, which have been provided to the board, one from Rick Hodgkins regarding Connect card machines and one from Barbara Stanton, ridership for the masses, regarding the cancellation of board meetings.
Right. Director Hume, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Would you please now move to item 3?
Do you want to do the consent calendar?
Oh, I'm sorry. Right on past then. We definitely want to do the consent calendar. I would like to know if any directors has any questions or public comment on item 2.1 to 2.6.
Hearing none, I'll move approval of items 2.1 through 2.6.
It's been moved in second. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Abstain? Oppose? Let the record show we are unanimous in support. All right, we will now move to item 3.
Okay, for item 3, public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda. We have Jeffrey Tartagia.
Well, Board, Jeff Tardagier, an advocate, transit, and a number of other aspects. I won't take up my 2 minutes all going after Mr. Rick for dealing with the cancellation of the board meeting and the other factors of things that did not happen that really need to happen. But what I am going to talk about is the fact that also the MAC also was canceled this month. So you've not heard about the latest problems with the light rail. And that is your operators are now opening the doors that not necessarily deploying the ramps. There's also the issue where of what's going on is that at various stops you have where the ramps do not deploy. I've been able to get operators at Sac Valley Station to observe and see this happening where it will go intermittently. My understanding is the 11th chain is going to operate and make it where the inside will do the opening of doors, both for the platform and deploying the ramp. I don't see my timer on there to see time-wise, but oh, thank you. I'm sorry, looking at the other spot through there. I also want to compliment and say that the new website, I'm still exploring. That's come up through there. And also the factor of that, let's see, what is that called? When you first did, and this is not any too much reflection of their sayings, but when you first did the bus bridge for dealing with from Globe down to Cathedral, a lot of riders could not see the information and the way that it was labeled in there in dealing with interruptions on the signage left some complaints and left some issues through there. This last time where you're doing it right now, regarding for Dos Rios, of pulling out at Al-Qaeda Flats and doing, I've not heard any comments about from the riders of other than the fact of where is the gold line or blue line running? And that was again, when I got on here, was a few minutes behind. I'm assuming in
Time
part
is up.
respectless. My time's up.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Next, we have Helen O'Connell.
Hello. I'm going to talk about the rollout of the new software for RTGo. I've had many friends that have had issues with at least the first 4 or 5 days. The buses are extremely late. Some of them have been up to 4 hours late. People that came from dialysis, they need to get home. They have medical issues that they need to deal with when they get done with dialysis. Waiting for 4 hours after your pickup time, it puts their medical conditions in danger. I had to wait 3.5 hours to get home from church, so I opted not to go home from church because I had to go back to church and I would have missed my pickup going back to church. So I stayed at church. Other people, they had rides, but they had a ride like at for UServe, but they were unable to use UServe. So they canceled UServe and the bus was coming from RTGo, and 30 seconds before they got out to the bus, the ride was canceled. Everybody didn't know what to do. People are having a hard time figuring out how to use the new app. It's really confusing to everyone that's involved. Receptionists, dispatchers, drivers, and riders. I'm hoping it won't take too long before they can work out the bugs, but I think the big issue is that there wasn't enough information put in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
And that's all the public comment.
Great, great. Okay, let's move to our next item. I'm confident that all the concerns that were spoken about in our open session will be addressed by staff. And so we hear your concerns, and I thank you for bringing those concerns to our attention. And I'm sure they took notes and they will be addressing those concerns, especially with the software and the safety issues. So thank you very much for presenting that to us. Okay, next item, please.
Next item, 4.1, new business information, fiscal health update and long-term outlook. Jason Johnson is here to present this item.
Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Jennings and members of the board. Today I'll be providing a fiscal health update for SAC-RT, along with our long-range outlook focusing on the next 5 to 10 years. The presentation topics will be some peer comparisons, a little bit of historical and current information, our 5 and 10-year forecasts, a brief overview of some capital funding history, and then a note on federal guideline impacts. This slide provides just a few examples of how transit agencies across the nation are making headlines for the wrong reasons, as many are dealing with fiscal cliffs. I understand this may be a little difficult to read, so I've condensed this into some bullet points on the next slide. The term fiscal cliff is used a lot in discussions about transit agencies these days. It refers to looming budget deficits that many transit agencies are facing currently or in the near future. In fact, a recent APTA survey shows that approximately 50% of the nation's public transit agencies are currently impacted. Among peer agencies, BART, facing a fiscal cliff, will deplete their operating reserves in the next fiscal year. Regarding this, there is a 1/2 to 1 cent 2026 sales tax proposed for the Bay Area Transit Services. As noted, this is not just a California transit issue. CTA, Metra, and PACE in Chicago share doomsday scenarios as fiscal cliff looms, cutting services by 40% in 2026. And in Pennsylvania, transit systems are facing a deficit of $240 million with 45% service cuts proposed. The good news is that this is not SAC-RT. Even as we operate with significantly less local funding support as compared with many of our peers across California. Many of you have seen this slide before, which highlights the disparity in local tax measure funding for public transit agencies in California. For context, the 1.5 cent LA Metro sales tax covers approximately 50% of their operating budget, whereas the 5 cent that SAC-RT receives is covering only approximately 22% of our budget at this time. Additionally, there have been discussions about a 1/4 cent sales tax for the Sacramento region for public transit. However, this 1/4 cent added to our current 5 cent sales tax would still put us below each of the peers on this list in total. But in the face of this adversity, SAC-RT has embraced a mantra of doing more with less and a laser focus on business process optimization. A great example of this is how we have significantly increased our operating reserves from approximately a low of $3 million in 2016 to nearly $40 million today. This was in large part due to the availability of federal stimulus funding in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Through strong fiscal policy and strategic planning, we were able to shift around funding sources to maximize the benefit for both operating and capital needs while improving our financial position. I also wanted to briefly touch on the difference between our current $20 million line of credit, which we've not used since October of 2020, and our operating reserve. The line of credit is primarily there to address short-term cash flow issues, which I can say with confidence that we do not expect in the near term, whereas the operating reserve is available for budget deficits, whether that be through the budget process, which we're in the middle of for next year, or if it's during the fiscal year itself. That would be related to reductions in expected revenues that we're receiving. Such has not been necessary, but I did want to highlight a few examples where this would have been an option. The local transportation funding revenues highlighted in red on this table were originally budgeted last fiscal year at approximately $100 million. That was then revised down in January of last year by about $10 million. Then in the current fiscal year, the LTF revenues, which are currently budgeted at $87.8 million, have been recently revised down again by about $7.2 million. Staff was able to close these funding gaps created by these revenue reductions through a combination of shifting available revenue sources and expenditure reductions. The main expenditure reduction in this year was the replacement of our Smart Ride program with SAC-RT Flex, which is projected to save us $8.5 million in the next fiscal year, with a cumulative savings of approximately $100 million in the next 10 years. I also wanted to make note on this slide for the federal stimulus funds. In this fiscal year, we have fully expended all the federal stimulus funds that have been made available. We are transitioning over now to the state SB 125 funding. Additionally, in this year, for the first time in 5 years, we are using some of the flexible federal funding, which in this case was the 5307 urbanized funding. I make note of this because historically, both flexible federal 5307 and 5337, as well as state STA funds, were used to cover operating budget gaps. I want to make note that the upper portion on each of these bars, I believe is an orange or green, orange represents the entirety of the funds in most years. There are small amounts perhaps, but mostly the entire available funding, flexible funding that was available in each of those fiscal years that was then taken away for or made unavailable for capital projects. This unfortunately negatively impacted our capital projects by limiting the funds that could be used directly or leveraged to compete for larger funding opportunities. However, starting in 2021, with the availability of the COVID-19 relief funding, we're able to shift the majority of flexible funding back to capital projects. Unfortunately, as relief funding decreases and expenditures continue to increase, we are now having to use some of the flexible funding once again for operations. In 2028, we'll have to use all of our flexible funding to cover projected operating budget gaps, as all current relief funding will be fully expended. And by 2030, even those flexible funds will be insufficient, and we need to start using our operating reserves absent a new revenue source. As a reminder, SACRT has demonstrated efficiency in peer comparisons as reported in the National Transit Database, which puts us about 20% better than our peers. SACRT's cost per revenue mile compared to the top 10 transit agencies in California is $16.81 compared to an average of $22.30. All of the transit agencies providing light rail service in the state have an average cost per revenue mile of $27.32 compared to SACRT's $23.14, all while maintaining a fair and competitive salary and benefits package for all of our employee groups. As exemplified throughout this presentation, staff has worked diligently to maintain SACRT's fiscal health and has been very successful in reducing costs and building reserves by focusing on business optimization and efficiency, reimagining the services we provide, and maximizing the benefit of all funding sources. However, with all that we have done, it is getting more difficult to find additional efficiencies and cost reductions without impacting our service. Thus, current projections show operating reserves being depleted in fiscal year 31 and a budget deficit existing thereafter, absent a new funding source prior to 2030. I also want to note that the expenditure reductions related to the transition from Smart Ride to SACRT Flex are incorporated into these projections. So the good news is that our fiscal cliff is 5 years farther out than it is for many of our peers. But without a new funding source and or significant cost reductions, that cliff does exist. It's important to note also that the primary operating cost for SACRT and public transit in general is payroll. Payroll comprises approximately 70% of our operating budget, and in large part due to contractual obligations, increases by about 5% annually, which is actually below industry averages. As was previously mentioned, prior to fiscal year 21, we primarily used flexible federal and state funding for operations, which significantly impacted our ability to compete for capital funding, as well as provide general funding for state of good repair projects. The focus since 2017 has been on these high priority projects, such as the light rail modernization project, which has been significantly advanced with the shifting of flexible funding back to capital projects in fiscal year 21. However, shifting this funding once again to operations will lead to our inability to have matching funds available when applying for competitive grants to fund many of our outstanding capital projects. I also want to note that the significant increase in capital funding since 2021 is not solely due to the shift of flexible funding from operations to capital, but very much a result of the hard work and success of our grants team and others in pursuing all available funding. Lastly, under the new executive administration, there have been several changes that will impact the federal funds SACRT receives in the future. While this does not have a direct impact on current operating revenue streams, it may reduce the funding available for capital projects, which will indirectly impact operations. There are also many unknowns at this time. Staff continues to review and assess the impacts of future changes. So in summary, staff has worked proactively to maintain fiscal strength. We've extended the use of federal stimulus funds, shifted flexible federal and state funding to capital projects, increased operating reserves to almost $40 million, continued focus on our business process optimization, and are constantly analyzing service models to maximize benefit and reduce costs. SACRT Flex replacing Smart Ride being a great example of this. And while many public transit agencies are already facing their fiscal cliff with significant reductions in service and staff, SACRT's fiscal cliff is still 5 years out, but emphasizes the need for a new funding source before 2030. This presentation is meant to start a dialogue regarding SACRT's funding needs. We have given you a snapshot of the efforts we have taken to remain fiscally strong, as well as the challenges that lie ahead. With leadership from this board, an experienced management team, a well-established strategic plan, empowered employees, and an engaged public, staff is confident we can overcome these challenges. That concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Why don't we start with director comments? Member Maple.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate it. And I know we'll hear from the public after. I just quickly wanted to say that I really appreciate the amount of time and energy that the entire staff and the executive director have put into really streamlining the operations. I think that it's very clear by looking at the numbers, looking at the budget, comparing it across other transit agencies that we're doing a really good job on that front. And so I just really want to call that out. And then it also seems to me that one of the biggest opportunities that we have in front of us is the possibility of a ballot measure in 2026, hopefully, if all goes well. I know there are, I think, maybe not competing efforts, but different efforts or different conversations happening. I'm wondering if anyone can kind of briefly update us on that. And if not, if we can have an agenda item in the future to really go into that more in depth. Thank you.
Member Dickinson, then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I was curious about the fare box recovery ratio at 7%, and from a couple of standpoints. If you go back a little bit in time, maybe a few years, regional transit was close to 30%. And fare box, yeah, I see you furrowing your brow, but some of us remember when
federally mandated
when it was there, and that gets to the second aspect of this. There had been state requirements. I think RT got some relief from those at one point in time with respect to fare box recovery ratio in order to receive state funding. So can you comment first of all on the reasons for fare box recovery ratio being now at 7%, what, if any, options there may be? Obviously, raising fares is an option, but are there other options to boost that fare box recovery ratio? And thirdly, what legal requirements, if any, are we operating under from either a state or federal standpoint with respect to fare box recovery ratio?
I'll answer the last question first. The fare box recovery ratio was postponed or suspended. That affects all transit agencies in California. I believe that's coming up or being revisited in the near future. We're still under that at this point and not required any specific requirement. Regarding the historical, I didn't realize that we were at 30%, because I know that we were in the low 20s pre-pandemic. The lowering of the fare percentage at this time is really in response from what happened during the pandemic, but we've slowly returned. We've slowly been increasing that. I believe we were at a low of around 3 to 4% right in the middle of the pandemic, but it's slowly been growing since that time. Regarding increasing the fares, I can't speak to that directly at this point. But
well, I'm sorry. I was about options. If you think there are options outside of raising fares that could enhance fare box recovery ratio.
We do know that there's a return to work order at the state level at this point. We're working with the state to try and improve those revenue streams. So that's one thing that will definitely help us when that occurs in July. We should see a boost at that point.
Yes, and it actually was near 30% if you go back into the 80s and 90s. I do think that it would be worth assessing if there are strategies that we could adopt or employ to increase the fare box recovery ratio outside of increasing fares. I mean, when you look at your charts going out into the period of time when you have a non-identified gap, even a modest increase in fare box recovery ratio could cover those gaps. I mean, if you had even 5 to 10%, if you got up to say 15 to 20% in that range of fare box recovery ratio, it would address in fact, it would more than address those gaps, I think, if I was doing my quick math correctly. So that's why I'm curious. That's one thing that RT does have within its control. There aren't maybe a whole lot of other things, but that is one thing. Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Chair, can
Yes,
I chip in on that? Try to improve the recovery ratio is actually is one of the top priorities. And, you know, 80s, 90s, you know, ridership recovery, the fare box recovery ratio was 25, 30% as high as that. Unfortunately, this industry changed a lot. One thing is the public demand, the actual fuel reduction. They want to, so that's why for us, we actually in the last 10 years, we reduced our fare from $2.75 to $2.5, $2.50. Instead of increase, we actually decreased because 70% of our riders are dependent riders. And they're true, you know, middle or low, low middle class families, and so that's why, you know, the equity, you know, issue was really, you know, a big, you know, issue in this industry, in this region too, especially Wolf, you know, board members and elected officials and you know, your constituencies really want us to push us to the fare-free, you know, fare-free, you know, situation. Recently, you know, just to, you know, very quickly, Chip, to, you know, echo what Director Maple said, you know, do we have already started discussion with about a potential Measure A? We did a lot without, you know, more, you know, spending more time to talk about that. But we got lots of feedback from our public saying that if we can make fare-free for students, for seniors, for veterans, and for some specific groups, then the potential, you know, pass of a new measure will be, that possibility will be much higher. So we even talk about to say if we can make the system free. And in the meantime, without those type of options, we do need to look at how we can increase the fare, you know, fare box recovery. So we would love to work with, you know, staff, you know, community partners and the board to propose some potential, you know, initiatives to increase the recovery ratio down the road.
Mr. Chair, if I just follow up briefly. Obviously, with any fare increases, a certain amount of deflection. And so you have that tension of, do you lose riders when you raise fare but realize greater revenue? There's always that debate to be.
They call it the death spiral. Yeah.
But that's why I'm trying to probe, and I think it's worth some examination about whether there are strategies outside of adjusting fares that could lead to more fare revenue and therefore a greater fare box recovery ratio. And to me, I mean, I'm not sure where other transit agencies around the country are running now with their fare box ratio recovery, but it seems to me if we have some examples around the country that are successful, more successful than 7%, and I suspect there are some, then maybe it's worth taking a look at those examples to see if there's something that could be applicable to our own landscape.
We did lots of peer comparisons. One thing what we have been working very hard since like 3-4 years ago was trying to work with state government because there are about 100,000 state workers.
Yeah.
We asked to say if you just give us $20 million or $10 million fixed payment, then we will make all 100,000 state workers ride free. We would love, even love for the you know, family members ride free, because right now we only receive about $3 or $4 million from them. But in the meantime, each of them can get up to $300 a month subsidies for riding transit. But lots of them they didn't want to use that. So we worked with state, you know, we had multiple meetings as late as last week to say if we can move forward on that. You know, we work with the highest possible, you know, officials to make, we probably need to get you guys involved to help us to make those type of, if, for example, if we get a $20 million, that means that is about 17% recovery ratio, additional whatever. So thank you for encouraging us to do that.
Happy to be involved in those kinds of conversations.
Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. I do agree that the fare box recovery ratio issue is a big one. And I can tell you, in the time that I've been on this board, I remember I thought it was an FTA requirement, but you had to be bouncing up around the 28% in order to be eligible for grant funding. And so it was not beyond the pale to be near 30%. We always kind of were close, but never quite there. But nonetheless, we were a heck of a lot higher than 7%. And so there's a portion of reasons why that is. And I think the pandemic obviously played a big part in that. I think the state workers play a big part in that because they had monthly passes that were, subsidized in many cases by their employer. But I want to ask a different question, and this goes back to something that Director Maple was talking about relative to the slides that you discussed of the operational efficiencies. And I do believe we have scrubbed, are we doing what we do as efficiently as possible? But I want to know, have we asked the question, can we do things differently to even bring our costs from an operational standpoint lower? And specifically, I would ask that relative to reducing coverage into some of the nooks and crannies of suburbia, more towards a feeder system that gets people to, rail is a very expensive asset to put in the ground. And to the idea that we are running parallel service with buses and rail, I think, have we looked at operational situations where we can reduce our operational costs? And before you answer that, I'll say the reason being is because otherwise goldfish grow to the size of their tank, right? And so if we keep adding more capital projects, we keep increasing our operational costs, we keep realizing that we need to find new funding sources, and you want to talk about a death spiral, then you really are on a grow broke situation where if only we make it up in volume, we'll get there someday. So have we done anything as far as reimagining aspects of the system to find more efficiencies that way?
So I would first say that as far as reimagining the SAC-RT Flex program, replacing the Smart Ride would be an example of that. But the other thing that I'll mention is we are in the middle, we just kicked off recently a comprehensive operational analysis that will run throughout this year that will look at exactly what you're talking about at this point. It'll look at both short-term and long-term opportunities, looking at both revenues and expenditures. So yes, we are definitely going to be doing that.
And what about getting into the weeds to the level of, I got to assume that a cutaway neighborhood shuttle is cheaper to run than a 40-foot bus? Those types of things. Have we gotten down that far to look and see?
I can't speak to that specifically, but I know that it will be a very in-depth study.
Okay.
We will definitely make this one of the major topics we're going to look into. When we just start the COA, 1 year long COA process, which is look at a comprehensive operational analysis. And actually, thank you for mentioning that at this critical junction, because what you just said really will give Anthony, our planning director, and his entire team to look into that direction more in depth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, our last speaker on this from the board is Director Budge.
So I appreciate Pat's perspective in terms of the cost analysis. Roger and I have some of the same memories from the 90s. And I completely agree with you that there used to be a standard, at least 20%. But I'm wondering if the fact that this staff is way more successful at getting grants than staff used to be. I mean, for a whole host of reasons, obviously. But depending on how the budget is calculated, maybe the fact that Henry and his team are more successful at bringing in lots of grant dollars makes the finite dollars that is the actual fare paid seem a lesser percentage within the total budget. So not being a budget person, that would be the first question I ask. What's the actual dollar value of the fare box recovery regarding the total dollars of the budget? But then you have to look at what happened with the people who used to ride the bus. And Henry referred to that, the fact that the composition of the ridership today is probably different than it was 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. And especially at the point in time when Phil Cerna was chair, and he constantly emphasized choice riders. All those choice riders had to stay home. And now we know that the state is struggling with whether or not to bring people back to their offices down here. And the whole thing kind of has an impact on what fare box recovery is actually going to mean in the future. So Pat is 100% correct. There really need to be strategies of how we look at delivering public transportation that doesn't cost as much perhaps as it used to.
So to the question about the fare box recovery ratio
That's
and then the additional dollars that are coming in, those additional dollars that I noted on that one slide, those were capital dollars. So those aren't factored into the operating side, so they aren't actually part of that recovery ratio. But I will say that the operating budget has increased significantly over time, an average between 5 and 10% year over year, whereas the amount of fares have perhaps not increased by that same amount or enough to keep up with that percentage increase. So even as our overall percentage does increase a little bit, the overall budget increases somewhat faster at times. So
the fare box recovery
so
goes into the operating budget.
we're bringing in more money. It's to the operating budget. We're bringing in more funds on the fare box side, but at the same time, our expenditures overall are increasing.
The primary really issue about the recovery, ratio down is about just simply, put some basic number here. In last 10 years, the contractual, obligation for the salary increased annually about 5%.
A very nice song, by the way.
So cumulatively, it's about 75% of cost increase within 10 years. In the meantime, our fare box, our fare ratio or rate did not change a dime. We actually decreased. Not just decreased one time, actually we board, authorized to add a lot of more discounts for different groups of, riders. So that, virtually reduced the previous ratio 20-25%, more than half. Well, maybe, even the 75% reduced by that much. To go back to 30%, 25% in the industry, right now industry average is about like 7%. And because we all face the same situation. But what Director Dixon said about looking for the potential, way to increase the revenue without impacting the fare, rate, $2.50, without increase that. And that is the challenging we're facing, and I think we need to looking for further harder on those opportunities. And our average fare per ride is about $2.50, but the actual revenue received is about $1 per ride because of so many discounts programs. Yeah.
So I want to make sure we move through the agenda. Do we have public comment on 4.1?
There's no public comment.
Great. And the last question I'll ask then, just you can be brief on this, is there a plan as far as updating us on the fiscal health, the update? Is there a regular schedule that we're going to have this kind of an update where we can discuss this in greater detail?
I'd be happy to present this annually as part of the budget process.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, so we can talk about that, because it sounds like based on the conversation, a number of directors that have engaged in conversation on this, we need to talk about it a little bit more often than we have. So Okay, this is an information item, doesn't need to be voted on at this point in time. I'm going to take the chair's prerogative and move to item 4.3 first before 4.2, while I still have a quorum for 4.3.
Okay, item 4.3, Resolution 2025-040031, declaring bus operator assaults an emergency, authorizing the suspension of competitive bidding and delegating authority to the general manager, CEO, to execute contracts for bus operator barriers as necessary to mitigate the emergency. This resolution does require a 4/5 vote or 9 board members, and the vote will need to be taken by roll call. For the record, and Lisa Hines is available to answer any questions.
Move approval?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Comments, questions, thoughts? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I support the item because I support protecting our employees and making sure that they're safe in their work environment. I just want to say it's a pretty sad testament on society that rather than throwing people off of buses for ill behavior, we have to put up barriers to protect them from behaving poorly. I just think that's indicative of where we've come and where we shouldn't be.
Other comments from directors? Did you have a presentation?
No, not on this item.
Okay, all right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Chair,
Roll call, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, and there also is 2 public comments.
No, that's good. So let's take the public comment first, and then we'll do the roll call vote.
Perfect. Okay, so we have Stephen McClurg.
Chairman, board members. I am a 25-year veteran operator here at Regional Transit, also bus and rail. And I just am here because I also sit on the safety committee and go through all these incidents that operators face. I have 2 good friends that have recently retired. They both have had injuries by being attacked by some passengers. They both are in extreme amount of pain, even though they've had corrective surgery, and they'll be in pain the rest of their lives. So I got a chance to see one of our recent attacks on an operator that happened to have one of the installed barrier doors. The bus operator received just a slight glance of a fist, and I think that was due to the barrier door itself. So last week, I haven't received any assaults myself except for an incident that happened just last week. I had a brawl break out on my bus. As I was trying to call radio control, I couldn't get it out. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't speak. And then I felt something wet hit my arm. I looked back and the guy spraying pepper spray on the bus. And so I probably could have avoided that if I had a barrier door. So it's very important to us, and we appreciate the safety committee bringing this to a light. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And next is Crystal McGeely.
Good afternoon, Chairman Jennings, Vice Chair Singh Allen, correct?
Yes.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for this. It is with great appreciation the members of ATU 256, voices of the past and the present, and secure our future. One thing I stress is about getting home, every day getting home. I stand before you hopeful now and grateful we have never, like ATU 265 or ATU in Oregon, we have never had to put anybody to rest. We have never had to visit any funerals. I've been into several funerals the last 3 years of my presidency, and I'm grateful I haven't had to be at a funeral based off of somebody getting stabbed or killed on one of our buses. I am also impressed that Sacramento Regional Transit is co-sponsoring AB 394. And I believe he's going to hand it out to you. And basically that bill, with the help of the past, Mr. Dickinson, you also was a part of this. I want to thank you for the past of putting up this. I also want you to know that the AB 394, that bill from Assembly Member Miss Lori Wilson, who I had the honor of standing up and speaking on behalf of ATU 256 and protecting us. These barriers aren't going to solve everything. We're still going to have issues, but I can guarantee you every day that we have the ability to kind of block stuff, keep stuff from hitting us, keep people from spitting on us, keep people from pulling us off the bus. Little things like that does matter. So I heard right before she said, point of order. I'm hoping that this recommendation that the staff gives, I'm hoping that I hear all ayes. I really, really do. So I want you, from the bottom of my heart, as a 22-year member bus operator, I want to say I'm not going to cuss, but it's about damn time.
Okay, all right. Final speaker?
That's all we have for
All
public
right,
comment.
good. We have a motion and we have a second. We need a roll call vote.
Yes, Director Burr,
Aye.
Director Budge,
Yes.
Director Dickinson, Director Hume, Director Kennedy is absent, Director Maple,
Aye.
Director Werba. Aye. Director Schaefer,
Aye.
Director Cerna is absent, Director Singh Allen,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings.
Yes.
Item passes with 9 votes.
Director Dickinson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, Crystal, I'd almost forgotten that legislation I carried a few years ago. So thank you for reminding me.
No, I'm very pleased that we are moving on this with the right amount of speed to make it happen and make sure that our employees are safe, in a safe environment. And, for all those who are out there doing things that shouldn't be done, I apologize on their behalf. But at the same time, we realize we're in a society that doesn't have the same values that we may all have. Doesn't understand the importance of public transportation, employees coming to work and wanting to come to work, not wanting to not come to work because of how they're being treated by the public. So fortunately we do, and we know how to make things happen, and we're doing that tonight. So as you say, it's about damn time. So let's go.
You're here.
Thank you. Okay. Next item, please.
Okay, we're going to go back to 4.2, information item. Mystery Writer Program update. Lisa Hines is here to present this item.
First, let me start and say thank you for passing that. We're excited to make that happen quickly. Chair Jennings, members of the board, I am Lisa Hines, VP of Safety, Security, Customer Satisfaction, and Facilities. I am here to present the Mystery Writer Program and provide a short safety and security update. In late 2023, SACRT went out to bid for a Mystery Writer company and contracted with a customer's point of view to conduct 25 mystery rides a month on all modes of SACRT transportation. The first mystery ride occurred in February of 2024. The Mystery Writer program consists of our contractor hiring and training mystery writers to take trips on SACRT's various modes of transportation. The mystery writers assess how we are doing while they are on our system. Each writer is unknown to SACRT staff and fills out a digital scorecard while taking their assigned ride. They later upload the data and the photos that they have taken, documenting their experience on our system. Each scorecard has an overall score. Here you see an example of questions on our digital scorecards. We worked in collaboration with the contractor to create a comprehensive scorecard for each mode of transportation. One of the highlights of the program is the fact that the contractor places all the documents on their database. This allows us the opportunity to read the scorecards and run reports in a timely fashion. Mystery writers grade SACRT on items such as ADA compliance, operators' behavior, on-time performance, and bus stop cleanliness, to name a few. Customer satisfaction works directly with operations to monitor each and every scorecard. To date, there have been 315 mystery rides completed on bus, light rail, and paratransit, with a system-wide average score of 94 out of 100. Out of the 25 monthly rides we contract for, 13 are for fixed route buses, 6 are for light rail, and 6 are for paratransit. Overall, we've had a very positive feedback from our evaluations. In talking with the president of a customer's point of view, she told me that SACRT is consistently doing very well compared to our peers. Although we strive for perfection, we cannot ignore that we do have some room for improvement. The top areas that we need to work on are on-time performance for fixed route, ADA announcements for light rail, and the need to escort SACRT Go passengers door to door, all of which we are actively working on. Now let's transition to a quick safety and security update. At the last board meeting, a speaker mentioned that his wife felt unsafe while riding the train in the evenings from Sac City College around 9 p.m. I thought it would be helpful to highlight the large number of security staff that we have to deploy on our system. Now, this is when we're fully staffed and every position's full, what you're looking at. And as you can see, we have over 150 security personnel when we're fully staffed. We are constantly assessing and reassessing the best times and locations for each security resource with the goal to provide SACRT employees and riders with a safe and secure experience. Examples of what we consider when assigning security staff include crime, calls for service, street harassment survey results, and feedback from riders and employees. We reviewed all train trips per day and created charts so we could really get into the weeds and understand exactly how many trains we staffed in a particular day. And I want to share an example that we looked at. So on a weekday, Monday through Friday train trips, there's 137 available trips. We're averaging, and during the week, 116 to 126 trips covered with security staff. Although some would love to see a police officer in every single train, it just isn't feasible. This is why we leverage technology, such as the Voice of God and Hayden AI, to help us enhance safety and security significantly without adding additional staff. I want to conclude with thanking Director Cerna for reminding staff of the importance of having a mystery rider program and prompting us to re-implement the program. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I'm hearing wonderful comment. My ears whispering. Good job. Okay, so do we have comments from community? Okay, we have
No
comments.
public comment.
Vice Chair, please.
I just wanted to recognize and thank you for this, paying attention to the Mystery Rider program, but specifically the safety aspect. We're not going to have riders unless they feel safe. And in order to expand and grow the program, having more riders, we obviously want to make them safe. So really thank you for that. That's all.
Other directors with comments?
I have a question.
Please.
You said re-implement the program. When is it? You might have said this and I might have missed it, but is it going to expire soon?
I'm really glad you asked that. So during COVID, it kind of stopped and it wasn't a good time to re-implement the program and go out to bid. So it kind of stopped for a couple of years during COVID. Prior to that, we had a mystery rider program and they only did 10 evaluations a month and it wasn't on a database. So we've really upped our game by being able to see it in real time, increasing the number of trips.
So we have a contract that's ongoing.
Correct.
Okay.
For a period of years, yes.
Any other questions or comments from directors? This is an information item, so we will thank you very much for the presentation. We will move to our next item.
The next item, item 4.4, I do need to announce a correction for this item. The committee name is incorrect. This is a chair appointment. The item presented is establishing an ad hoc committee to provide support to Sacramento Transportation Authority Board Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, and it should read establishing an ad hoc committee to provide support to Sacramento Transportation Authority New Transportation Funding Subcommittee. And Shelley Valentine will present this item. Oh.
Okay. So at this point in time, we want to propose a 5-member subcommittee. And I've had a chance to talk to some and not to others, but I will call out the names that I've had the opportunity to speak to. Katie Maple in the city of Sacramento, Anna Robor, I'm saying that wrong. Roba, thank you. I'm gonna get that before this term is over. Linda Budge, Rod Brewer, and Phil Cerner. That would be the 5 that I would propose. So if there is a significant problem with any one of them serving at this point in time, now would be the time to say, this is not a good fit for me right now. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, we're good? Good deal. Good.
And then can you establish a time for the committee? Okay,
All right, we can do that later, right?
or duration?
I think we want to,
We need to do that now. So
What are you doing?
what we need is for the chair to establish a scope and so that the board, their subcommittee knows what they're doing and a time frame.
I mean, like start date and end date?
Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Chair, I would propose a start date of immediately and an end date of the
Sometime in the near
general
future.
election of 2026.
Second.
I think it's typically 12 months,
12
but we
months,
can
yeah.
reappoint in January when we do the reappointments for committees and commissions,
Yeah.
if that
say
works.
for 2025.
I like that a lot. 2025, we'll go until December and start now immediately as effective as of today. What else do you need?
A scope of what their task is or what they're supposed to be doing.
But do we
Doesn't have
know-
to be
but do we know
complex.
what the STA Board new Transportation Funding Committee is?
Probably. I don't know all the details of that committee. Yeah.
Chair, might I say, I think one of our board members, Mr. Dickinson, is actually serving on that committee for STA, Transportation Measure Subcommittee. Yeah. So
So what do you do?
Serve on the committee.
So if it's helpful, my understanding of that committee is that they are coming together to discuss the possibility of having a 2026 ballot measure for transportation funding, which would be a renewal of the current funding measure in place, but with potentially different parameters. But please correct me, Mr. Dickinson.
No, you're on target. I mean, there's been a subcommittee established, hasn't met yet. So we'll figure out what we're doing maybe when we meet. But I wouldn't go to the bank on that just yet.
So our subcommittee will support the subcommittee that is being established by STA in potentially offering a measure for 2026.
Yes, when the chair of STA board talked to me last week, he requested, chair is Director Sarah. He mentioned, he talked to the STA funding subcommittee chair. Both of them feel it is very important for SACRT to have this subcommittee to support, collaborate, work with STA subcommittee to help to move this initiative forward. And one reason they want us to do it is normally in the past several times, 3 times, SACRT was allocated about 40% of the total funding. So we are the biggest funding partner in the past. So he really wants us to have this type of collaboration.
So the task is support and collaborate.
Yes.
Sounds like it to me. Support and collaborate. So I just want to make sure you have enough for us to be able to do this until once they get together, they can then establish other items that we can add to that list.
Wouldn't it be important, Chair? Wouldn't it be important then, support and collaborate is great, but also to be the voice of SACRT to make sure that we are negotiating a tax measure that represents the needs of SAC-RT, not just STA. So it is to be the voice with STA.
Thank you.
That's good.
Agree.
Voice of Regional Transit. Yes,
And Chair Jeffrey Tartagia has a comment on this item as well.
okay.
Board, my comment was because years ago, I did with the oversight committee of the STA, and that's what it looked like this was about, rather than a separate committee. But if anything I can do to encourage this, please continue. I'm working on property tax for a issue because we have failed so much on sales tax. But that was my public comment regarding this item, is I thought it was an oversight to the oversight committee. That's a separate committee of the STA.
Okay. You have what you need? All righty, great. And do we need to take a formal vote on this?
No, it's a chair appointment.
Gotcha, perfect. All righty, let's move to the next item, please.
The next item, 4.5, is an information item, report regarding amendment number 1 to contract change order number 1 and contract change order number 7 to the contract for Dos Rios Light Rail Station with DMZ Builders. There is no presentation for this item. The procurement ordinance requires that this information be shared with the board, and it is detailed in the staff report. Henry Ikwat-Ukwa is here to answer any questions.
Okay, we're looking for questions from the public and or from the board. On? No? Okay.
And there's no public comment.
Rod, is that your hand going up or are you stretching?
Reggie,
Okay, good.
I saw Henry make his way over there, so I was like, I had to make that little stretch.
Okay, I don't see, no questions from the public?
No.
All right, so I don't see, and it's an information item, so we've received the information. No questions, comments, so we'll move on to the next item.
The next item is 5.1, the general manager's report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, member, and the public. My report will be very brief. And first, next slide. So we're so honored to receive APTA 2025 Bus Safety Gold Award. And this is huge because nationwide, just a couple of three transit agencies received this. And we received 6 awards, only 2. We received 6 awards for light rail safety and security. This is the first time the bus. And as you can see, earlier when Lisa did a presentation, we have more than 10% of our staff are safety and security. 10, 15 years ago, our safety security staff is less than half of this. So that's another reason why the cost increased and the fare box recovery ratio reduced because the bottom cost increased significantly. And then the next slide, please. Couple weeks ago, Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative AOC host a rally in Folsom Lake College, and yes, yeah. Senator, Senator post in his website, encourage everybody to ride SAC-RT. So we get a pressure and we get, so we immediately add more service. And we first planned to get more service there. But with that, message, because, that's probably one of the most influential, messages or the rallies. So we add more service, which was very successful. You saw the people, line up to board our bus. Then 2 weeks ago, next one, please. We implement this tap ride service, contactless payment system, which is super convenient for our customer. And so Then, earlier, Helen, and we also heard from a couple, Sacramento Go paratransit service, customers, complained about our, app change, the scheduling system change. And we had a little bit of hiccup, and we immediately get the feedback. Helen, we immediately get the feedback the second day. You are 2 weeks later. Thank you. So, and we talk to, internally, staff work day and night, literally 24/7, that couple days, try to find the box to address, what went wrong, And thank you for, mentioning this in front of a board, so our board members, more, get a more clear message. And this past weekend, just 2 days, Saturday and yesterday, we, released our new website. And as you can see, the new website is very, very, is much better. So every week we had some initiatives, going, and we have been very busy. Okay. That being said, that concludes my report. Get back to you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions, comments, or thoughts to the general manager?
Thank you, Chair. Just want to say really pleased about the new website. Excellent work by the team. And I've already gotten some really positive feedback from constituents and others who are transit riders here in Sacramento. So just want to say kudos to you.
Others? Any public comment on the general manager's report?
Yes, we have Jeffrey Tartagia.
Jeffrey, how you doing? I can hear you clearly.
I'm going to say is considering for 2 months I had been complaining about the, shall we say, looking for the buses on the app. I like the new app and I'm starting to use it. The other
Say that
thing,
one more time, please. Just one more time. I couldn't hear it out of this. I need this here.
okay, I will say, I was complaining about the old problems with the alert app. I'm liking what I'm seeing on the new app. No, nobody at the RT explained to me that you were going to be doing that and putting that forward. I appreciate also the responsiveness, particularly with the Folsom on the Sanders thing through there. Appreciate the responsiveness. This staff does accommodate and make and do through here. One of my other comments are going to be regarding tonight is the 394 dealing with, because I've seen the new, shall we say, barrier in there using for drivers. We'll be coming up with appropriations on Wednesday, should we say the 30th. I just looked that up in the daily that I picked up today as dealing with the hearings at the Capitol. Yeah, I spend right now at the Capitol having the hearings to say no, yes, or that's a bad piece of legislation. I have that with a few. But anyway, Henry, thank you. I expect to meet further. I expect that we'll see some things going on through there, and I hope we can find out what is the way that we get a measure for dealing with income and should we say what's happening to us, because you've got a lot of capital projects. You need to fund those underneath. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Helen O'Connell.
Evening, Helen.
Good evening, one more time. I'm glad that SAC RT is getting that award for safety on the buses. I do have some questions. The new tap to ride, my friends are going, how do I make my credit card work on that? I'm not sure if they need to register their credit card or what they need to do to get it to work. Whenever they've been trying to use it, it hasn't activated, so I don't know if maybe it wasn't fully operational or not, so just a few questions.
Next, we have Julia Coleman.
Good afternoon, board members. I am Julie. I am not a mystery rider to Artigo. I am a 17-year veteran of paratransit. One of the main things that I really wanted to address was we need more reservationists, more drivers, more dispatchers, mainly because the ridership has gone up from the 900 to up to 1,500, and that's a day. That makes it very difficult for us to get to where we want to go when we want to go. Wednesday on the 23rd, I had a pickup time of 4 p.m. I didn't get picked up until 6:30, almost 6:30. I spent 68 minutes, that's an hour and 8 minutes, on the phone, listening to 68 times of RT appreciates your business before I could make my reservations. Our drivers need their overtime pay all the way back to July. Those are wages. There's no difference between the wages and overtime wages. The reason that a lot of this isn't working out with this new app is that you have a requirement that you must pick, because it's share ride, that you must pick up 4 riders before you have your first pickup. This is not bus stop to bus stop. This is essentially address to address and zip code to zip code, from Elk Grove, all of Sacramento, and Folsom. How you could cap our bus drivers to 120 for us is beyond my ability to comprehend. There's never been one single reservation in 17 years that has not been courteous. And if they didn't know the answer, they found out the answer for me. The same applies for the drivers and dispatchers. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all the public comment.
Okay. Henry, maybe at our next board meeting, you can kind of, in your general manager comments, give us a quick update on Tap to Go or the apps concerns that they have. Okay? Yes. Good deal. Okay. Next item, please.
So the next item, number 6, reports, ideas, and questions from directors and communication. We have 6.1, the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority Special Meeting Summary from March 19th, 2025.
Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I approve the minutes as presented, but I just wanted to call out specifically one item that was mentioned there regarding a name change for the Amtrak San Joaquins. As we roll out the Valley Rail project, we're looking to rebrand as the Gold Runner in order to recognize that there are throughway buses that extend well beyond the San Joaquin Valley, as well as ACE service and the service that will come up and serve Sacramento and the North Station to serve the airport. And then the other thing that I want to say is, speaking of those new stations, I had an opportunity to look at some, they're called elements of distinction that will be on those train stations. And the Elk Grove station was the one that is sort of the lead guinea pig. And so they will all have very stylized icons for the whole system expansion, with each one being different to represent the specific station that serves. And so as we look at designing the Sac City station and the Midtown station and the Sac Valley station and the North Natoma station, I hope there will be North Sac station. That's the one I meant. Thank you. I hope there will be robust public input regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, 6.2, Mobility Advisory Council Meeting Summary of March 20th, 2025. And Blanca's here if there's any questions.
Are any questions regarding the Mobility Advisory Council summary? Okay.
And 6.3, the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority Meeting Summary of April 16th, 2025.
I confess, Chair, I'm not prepared to make that report. Can I make that report the next meeting, please?
Absolutely. I appreciate your honesty, and we will take that report when you are ready to present.
But I can pick up for Director Schaefer.
Oh,
That's the
whoa,
pinch hit.
whoa, we got a handoff here. Hold on.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Got it. Got it.
6.3.
Got it.
All right, I took it down there to him, and he's got it. Go for me.
So for a quick high level, we adopted the annual business plan and the Amtrak operating agreement. We did both of those things, but we also talked about the next steps in the Tap to Ride program on the Amtrak trains for the Capital Corridors and how that program will work for the other 2 service lines that work throughout the state, and how that will translate in providing service between the Bay Area and Sacramento. So those were the 3 items that we addressed. It was a very quick meeting, but it was a very very fruitful meeting.
Thank you very much, Director Brewer.
Yes, thank you, Director Brewer. Appreciate it.
Always glad to help, Director Schaefer.
Any questions or comments regarding that? Anybody? Okay. Did you want to speak? I think you've been here the whole meeting, and did you sign a speaker sheet? Okay, so I know you missed that timing, so I'd like to give you the privilege of being able to be the last speaker. Are you okay with that?
A lot of you might know, I'm L.R. Roberts and I live in Oak Park. So a lot of you might know Warren Cushman, who used to do advocacy here before he moved to the Bay Area. So we were at that new hearing office on O Street last week, was it? I had to park 9 blocks away because there's no handicap parking. Warren is completely blind. He said, "Will you help me get my ride?" So I took him to the corner of O and 10th, and his ride didn't show up. And the guy told me that he could not drive from where he was, which was on 11th Street, which was on L Street, over to where I was. And I gave him directions with all the one-way roads. So eventually I took him to a restaurant, and he waited hours later to get a ride. So where that hearing office is for the state is right by light rail. And I had forgotten that if on our side, a block to the other side was where the light rail entrance is. I don't think there's any way Warren would have been able to find that. And I don't like where this hearing office is, because if you step out, what you're doing is stepping out right into the light rail. So I don't think that, we've got to do something about that, because people do go to that a lot. A lot of disabled people use that hearing office, and getting from there to the light rail station, if you're blind, I don't know how I would have explained it to him. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but it was a frightening experience.
Thank you. Henry, you can have somebody look into that.
We will.
Please. And you're available to speak to them. Okay, we will move to the final item, which is our closed session.
Closed session, item 10.1, conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, existing litigation, Lackey versus SACRT, case number 34202300334262.
And I will announce that there will be no report out after the closed session. So thank you for coming. Look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.